I was not born a thief. No one ever is. But life has a way of carving you into shapes you never intended to become. If you had seen me as a boy, barefoot, running through the dust with a wooden sword and a head full of stories, you would have never imagined the man I became. I didn't grow up dreaming of stealing purses or hiding in alleyways with a knife tucked under my belt. I dreamt of defending people, of being strong, of making my father proud. But dreams are fragile things. And hunger. Hunger is a sculptor with cruel hands. My father died when I was young. My mother followed soon after, her grief eating her faster than the sickness. I was left alone with a brother too small to fend for himself and a world too harsh to care. The Romans didn't feed boys like us. The priests didn't see us. Traders walked past us as if we were shadows cast by a dying sun. Every day the hunger gnawed deeper. Every night I prayed less and less. By the time I was old enough to be called a man, I had already learned this simple truth. The world only gives when you take first. The first thing I ever stole was bread. Hard, cold, and half-molded. The baker beat me so badly I couldn't stand for 2 days. But the bread kept my brother alive for a week. That's how corruption starts. Quietly, wrapped in necessity, disguised as love. One small wrong, then another, and people stop seeing you as a man. They start seeing you as a threat. Eventually, you start to believe them. Years passed, and my heart hardened like old clay. I stole coins. I stole livestock. I stole weapons. I stole anything that kept my brother's ribs from showing and my own belly from burning. Some called me violent, but the truth. Violence was usually the only language men in my world understood. By the time Rome finally caught me, I was no innocent. I won't pretend otherwise. I had blood on my hands, the kind that doesn't wash off even with tears. I had done things that still stalked my sleep. I had crossed lines you cannot uncross. But even then, even at my worst, I had never imagined a Roman cross as my ending. Crucifixion wasn't punishment. It was erasure. They didn't nail you there to kill you. They nailed you there so everyone would see you die slowly. When the soldier read the sentence, my legs gave out. The world didn't go silent like people say before death. It got louder. Every memory, every mistake, every regret, all of them shouting over each other, demanding the final word. I didn't think about heaven or hell. I stopped believing in those long ago. I thought about my brother. I wondered if he'd hear of my death. I wondered if he'd care. I wondered if he'd forgive me. The morning they marched us out, the sky was the color of a fading bruise. The city streets were lined with people, mocking, jeering, spitting. But something was different this time. They weren't looking at me. Their eyes were fixed on the man carrying the cross in front of us. A man with no chains. A man with no hatred in his eyes. A man who walked like someone who had already forgiven the world for every sin it hadn't even committed yet. I didn't know his name at the time. Not truly. I had heard whispers: rabbi, healer, troublemaker, miracle worker, madman, Messiah. But that meant nothing to me then. All I knew was this: the road to death is usually filled with fear. But he walked like someone going home. My cross was heavy. His was heavier. My body trembled. His bled. I stumbled because I was weak. He stumbled because he was carrying what none of us could see. And for one fleeting moment, our eyes met in the chaos of the crowd. That was the moment everything in my life shifted. Not because he pitied me, not because I understood him, but because for the first time in my entire existence, someone looked at me without contempt. No Roman had ever done that. No priest had ever done that. Not even I had ever done that. It was the smallest glance. A second, maybe less. But it felt like the sun cracked through the storm inside my chest. And I hated it. I hated how it made me feel seen, known, exposed, loved in a way I didn't believe I deserved. I looked away quickly, because when someone like him truly sees someone like me, it hurts. It burns. It resurrects things you thought were long dead. And I wasn't ready for resurrection. Not yet. They dragged us up the hill like livestock. Golgotha, the place of the skull. I had passed it many times in my life, but never as slowly as I did that morning, never with chains biting into my wrists, never with the certainty that my feet would not walk back down. The wind was sharp on that hill. It carried dust, blood, and the kind of silence that makes even the bravest men tremble. Crucifixion is not just death, it is humiliation sharpened into ritual. The soldiers worked with mechanical cruelty. They had done this hundreds of times. We were not men to them, only tasks to complete. They did not shout, they did not rush, they simply performed a job. A horrifying, unholy job. They threw me to the ground, face grinding into gravel. I tasted iron, blood or rust, I couldn't tell. My arms were yanked apart until the joints screamed. I begged for breath, not mercy. Mercy was a language Rome didn't speak. Then I heard another sound, wood dropping beside me. Heavy, final. His cross. The man they called Jesus fell to his knees, not from weakness but from the weight of something I still didn't understand. Soldiers cursed him. The crowd mocked him. Someone threw dirt at his back. And yet, through it all, he didn't resist. He didn't spit back. He didn't threaten vengeance or scream hatred. His silence was not fear. It was something deeper, something fierce and terrifying in its gentleness. They nailed the other thief first. He cursed them and they cursed back. His screams tore through the hill like a knife. I tried not to listen, but you can't ignore the sound of iron breaking through flesh. When they finished with him, they moved to me. I clenched my teeth so hard I felt one crack. I fought the urge to vomit. I fought the instinct to run, though there was nowhere to run to. When they pinned my wrist down, the soldier's hand smelled of sweat and metal. He lifted the hammer. I didn't pray. I didn't cry out for God. God had never answered me before. Why would he start now? But when the hammer struck, when pain exploded through my entire being like lightning in my bones, I screamed his name anyway. Not out of faith, out of desperation, out of instinct, and maybe, somewhere deep down, out of a hope so buried I thought it had died years ago. Then came the moment I dreaded most. His turn. Jesus lay down on his cross without being forced, without thrashing, without pleading. He stretched out his hands as if offering them, as if surrendering wasn't defeat, but fulfillment. Even the soldiers hesitated, not out of compassion, but confusion. They were used to men begging for their lives, spitting in their faces, fighting like cornered animals. But this man, he lay there like a king settling onto a throne. The hammer rose. The hammer fell. He didn't scream. He gasped, one sharp, guttural breath, but no curses left his lips. No hatred. No condemnation. Only something that sounded, impossibly, like grief for them. They lifted his cross first, and when it locked into place with a violent thud, the sky itself seemed to flinch. His body sagged under its own weight, every breath a battle, every moment a decision to remain alive. I tried not to look at him. I tried to stare at the horizon, the clouds, anything but his face. But my eyes betrayed me. And when I looked at him, truly looked, something inside me cracked open. He was suffering more than any man I'd ever seen. His back flayed raw. Thorns pressed into his brow. Blood trailing down his ribs in thin, shaking lines. Yet his eyes, God help me, his eyes held no bitterness. They held sorrow, yes. Agony, yes. But also, a kind of fierce, unrelenting love I had never encountered in any priest, any rabbi, any man. How could a dying man look at the world with love? How could someone in that much pain look at us, asterisk at me asterisk, with anything but disgust? My whole life, I stole to survive. I lied to survive. I fought to survive. But here, nailed beside me, was a man who loved even while dying, who forgave even while suffocating, who grieved for the world even as the world celebrated his suffering. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. Shame curled inside me like smoke. For the first time since I was a child, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I had been wrong about everything. The other thief didn't see what I saw. He spat insults between gasps, cursing Jesus as if mocking him might lighten his own agony. But Jesus didn't respond. Not with anger, not with insult. He simply raised his eyes to heaven and through cracked lips, whispered a prayer not for himself, but for the very men killing him. Father, forgive them. Forgive them. The soldiers, the crowd, the mockers, me. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. The words hit me harder than any hammer blow. No one had ever forgiven me. No one had ever offered me grace. And certainly not in the middle of dying. Something shifted in me then. Something terrifying. Something new. Hope. Not the kind you cling to out of denial. Not the kind you fabricate to survive another day. But the kind that feels like a hand reaching into the darkness to pull you out. My chest tightened. For the first time in decades, I wanted to speak truth. Not lies, not excuses. Truth. And truth tastes strange when your whole life has been built on the opposite. The other thief's voice cut through the air like a jagged blade. Even through the haze of pain, even as my body trembled under the weight of the cross, his words stabbed deeper than the nails in our wrists. So you're the Messiah, aren't you? He spat, his breath ragged. Save yourself and us. The crowd roared at that, some laughing, some pointing, others echoing the taunt like drunken parrots. To them, we were all the same. Criminals, failures, entertainment. But I knew better. I had lived enough evil to recognize innocence when I saw it. The man beside us did not belong here. Not among thieves. Not among murderers. Not among men like me. And yet he hung there willingly. The other thief kept cursing, each word soaked in fear disguised as rage. I understood that fear. I had lived with it so long it felt like a second heartbeat. But his cruelty, his desperation wrapped in hate, it made something inside me break. Enough! I shouted, though my voice came out weaker than I intended. The effort tore fire through my chest. Don't you fear God? We're getting what we deserve. But this man, he's done nothing wrong. The word surprised even me. I hadn't spoken of right and wrong in years. Morality was a luxury thieves couldn't afford. But hanging there, ribs tearing with every breath, death creeping up my limbs like a cold tide, I couldn't lie anymore. Not to myself. Not to the world. Not to God. Not in front of him. The other thief turned to me with disgust, but I didn't care. Let him scorn. Let him hate. I was done hiding behind anger. Something inside me had awakened, a memory of the boy I once was, the boy who wanted to be good but didn't know how. And then, I turned my head toward Jesus. It hurt to move. Every inch felt like glass grinding through bone. But I forced my eyes toward him, because I needed him to see me. Not the thief, not the criminal, not the failure, but the truth beneath it all. He met my gaze instantly. Not with surprise. Not with judgment. But with recognition. As if he had been waiting for me to finally look. In that moment, the world fell away. The crowd's jeers became distant. The soldiers' laughter blurred. The pain in my body dimmed. It was just us, two dying men, and yet only one of us seemed untouched by the cruelty of this world. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. My throat was raw. My breath shallow. Lord, the word felt unfamiliar on my tongue, too sacred for someone like me. But it was true. I believed it. I believed him. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. I didn't ask him to save me from death. Men like me don't get saved from death. I didn't ask him to spare me, to rescue me, to pull me off the cross. I asked for something smaller, and yet infinitely greater. I asked not to be forgotten. My whole life I had been forgotten. By family, by faith, by society, by God. I thought anonymity was my destiny. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized something with terrifying clarity. This man saw me. Not the sinner. Not the criminal. Me. For a fraction of a second, fear crept in. Fear that he might look away, that he might judge me like everyone else had. But he didn't. Jesus raised his head, despite the agony, despite the blood dripping into his eyes. He looked at me with a tenderness that should not exist on a hill of death. And then, through cracked lips and labored breath, he spoke words that shattered me completely. Truly I tell you, today, you will be with me in paradise. I couldn't breathe. Not because of the cross, because of the mercy. Paradise. Me. The thief. The failure. The man who had done nothing but survive through sin and ruin. I felt tears burning down my face. Not the tears of fear, but the tears of a soul finally seen. Tears born not from despair, but from hope so overwhelming it felt like light pushing into darkness that had lived in me for decades. I closed my eyes for a moment, and for the first time since childhood, I felt peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come from survival, but from surrender. Not surrender to death. Surrender to love. The crowd continued shouting. The soldiers continued laughing. But none of them knew what had just happened. None of them saw the miracle taking place between two crosses on a hill of death. The sin of a lifetime had been washed away by a single sentence. And I knew, whether I had minutes or hours left, it didn't matter. Because he had spoken. He had chosen. He had promised. And his promises never fail. If death was coming, let it come. I was no longer afraid. He was beside me. And that was enough. After he spoke those words, those impossible, undeserved words, something inside me loosened, as if the chains I had worn all my life finally snapped. The pain was still there, sharp as ever, tearing through my ribs and shoulders, but it no longer felt like punishment. It felt like passage. Like a doorway I had spent my life running from that had somehow become the only place I wanted to walk through. I kept my eyes on him as much as I could, afraid that if I blinked too long, if I looked away for even a moment, I would lose the last and only thing that had ever truly seen me. But the sun grew hotter, pressing down on us like a cruel hand. Sweat stung my eyes. Blood ran down my arms in slow, sticky trails. My head hung forward more and more with each passing minute, and every breath felt like a battle I was losing. The crowd hadn't lost their enthusiasm. In fact, after Jesus spoke to me, they seemed to shout louder, as if mercy offended them. They hurled insults not just at him, but at anyone who dared show him reverence. One man near the front laughed so hard he doubled over, shouting, "Look, even the thieves beg him. What kind of king dies like this?" Another tossed a handful of dust into the air, sneering, "If he were truly chosen, God would save him." But they didn't understand. They couldn't. I didn't understand the depth of it either. Not yet. But I knew enough to recognize holiness when I saw it. Jesus didn't need saving. That was the part the crowd would never grasp. He wasn't dying because he was powerless. He was dying because he was willing. Somewhere behind the crowd, I heard weeping. Not the loud, performative mourning of hired grievers, but a deep, broken wail, the kind that shakes the world. I forced my eyes to focus, and that's when I saw them. The women. His followers. His mother. She stood there, wrapped in grief so heavy it cast a shadow larger than her body. Her face wasn't twisted in anger. It was carved with sorrow. A kind of sorrow that only a mother can carry. The sorrow of watching the world kill the child she once held in her arms. Even from the cross, I felt it. Her pain cut deeper than any nail. Jesus saw her too. And even in his agony, even as the weight of the world crushed his lungs, he lifted his head toward her. He spoke softly, too softly for me to hear, but I saw the exchange. I saw his eyes shift toward the disciple near her, the one they called John. And I understood. Even in death, he was mending the living. He was stitching broken hearts together, giving his mother a son and his disciple a mother. Who does that while dying? I had spent my entire life taking, stealing, protecting only myself and the one person I once loved. But this man, this dying man, was still giving, still loving, still seeing beyond his own suffering. And it wasn't grand or dramatic. It was gentle, purposeful, beautiful. That was when something terrifying struck me, an understanding that felt too large for my mind to hold. I was witnessing love in its purest form. Not the love of men. Not the love that demands something in return. Not the love that shifts with mood or circumstance. This was divine love. A love that bleeds. A love that forgives. A love that refuses to die, even while its vessel is being murdered. The sky began to darken unexpectedly. It wasn't a cloud passing over the sun. It was something deeper. Something wrong. Even the crowd noticed. Their laughter faltered. Their mockery stumbled. People looked up, squinting, confused. The light dimmed until Golgotha felt like twilight, though it was still midday. A woman in the crowd gasped, clutching her shawl. "Is this a sign?" she whispered. "Yes," I wanted to shout. "But not the kind you think." Because in that moment, I understood with frightening clarity. Heaven was grieving. The earth trembled beneath us. The air grew thick, as if creation itself was holding its breath. Animals in the distance cried out. A few children began to scream. The soldiers shifted uneasily, gripping their spears tighter, glancing at one another with uncertainty. And Jesus, he didn't look afraid. He looked resolved, as if the darkness didn't signal danger, but fulfillment. I felt fear crawl up my spine, not for myself, but for the world. Because something sacred was happening, something the earth could feel, though the hearts of men could not. My breaths grew shorter, faster. Pain clawed through my chest. My vision blurred. But I clung to consciousness with every scrap of strength I had left, because I needed, desperately needed, to see what would happen next. I wasn't afraid of dying anymore, but I was afraid of missing him. The other thief had grown quiet. Whether from exhaustion or fear, I didn't know. I didn't look at him. My eyes were fixed on Jesus, even as the world around us trembled. If God was going to speak, if heaven was going to tear open, if eternity was going to reveal itself, I wanted to witness it. I wanted to see him until my final breath. Because the truth had become impossible to ignore. I began this day a thief, but I would not end it as one. Something was changing. Something holy. Something irreversible. And I knew, deep in the very marrow of my soul, that I was standing at the edge of a miracle wrapped in darkness. And I still had breath left to witness it. The darkness deepened until it felt almost physical, like a veil pulled over the world. It wasn't the darkness of night, nor the passing shadow of a storm. It was thicker, heavier, almost aware. A darkness that felt like mourning, like judgment, like the earth itself was recoiling from what humanity was doing to its creator. A chill crawled across my skin despite the heat of my fevered body. The crowd shifted uneasily. Their jeers quieted. I heard someone whisper, is this because of him?" Another muttered, "Maybe we've gone too far." But no one stepped forward to undo what they had done. No one loosened a nail. No one lifted a finger to ease his suffering. Fear can shake a man, but it rarely changes him. I forced myself upright, though the movement sent white-hot agony shooting down my spine. I had to see him clearly. I had to witness every second. My life had been a chain of wrong turns, bad choices, desperate acts. But this moment, this hill, this cross beside his, it felt chosen. Not by Rome, not by cruelty, but by God himself. Beside me, Jesus lifted his face toward the sky. The darkness framed him like an unholy crown, but his expression, God, his expression, was a mixture of sorrow and determination, as if he were holding together the very fabric of reality by his own will. And then the moment came. A sound ripped through the sky, a voice, but not like any voice I had ever heard. It wasn't the voice of a broken man. It wasn't the agonized cry of someone being torn apart by pain. It was deeper, older, filled with a grief so vast it felt like it belonged to creation itself. My God, why have you forsaken me?" The words shook me to the core. I didn't understand theology. I didn't know scriptures. I didn't grasp prophecy. But I recognized abandonment. I had lived it. I had tasted it. I had felt the void of being unseen, unheard, unloved. Hearing him say those words, him, the only truly righteous one, felt like watching the sun cry. People misunderstood. Some shouted, "He's calling for Elijah." Others laughed nervously, as if trying to drown out their own dread. But I knew better. He wasn't confused. He wasn't delusional. He wasn't calling for rescue. He was experiencing the full weight of humanity's separation from God, the weight of every sin, every failure, every regret, every betrayal, including mine. He was taking all of it, all of us, into himself. The realization hit me with such force that tears poured down my face despite how much each drop burned. I wasn't just watching a man die. I was watching salvation being carved into reality with every labored breath. My body trembled. The ropes cut into my shredded wrists. My lungs felt full of fire. I was close, so close, to slipping into unconsciousness. The world wavered at the edges, trembling like a mirage. But then the ground shook violently, snapping me back into clarity. A roar thundered across the hill. Dust rose in clouds. People screamed and fell to their knees. Even the soldiers looked terrified for the first time, clutching their spears like children grasping for comfort. And still, he held on. Still he fought for breath. Still he gave himself willingly. I had never seen strength like that. Not in warriors. Not in kings. Not in men who bragged about power or gods carved from stone. This was different. This was divine strength wrapped in human suffering. A soldier nearby whispered, almost to himself, "Surely, this man was righteous." He said it like a confession, like a truth too heavy to swallow. I closed my eyes, the pain crashing over me in relentless waves. My vision blurred, the world spinning. I tasted blood. My heartbeat faltered. My breath grew shallow. I could feel death creeping in from the edges of my limbs. My fingertips tingled. My legs felt like stone. This was it. Time was slipping through me like sand through broken fingers. I looked at him. Even through the haze, I saw him. His chest heaved. His head drooped. His skin hung in shreds. Yet somehow, even now, his presence radiated something I could only describe as purpose, like the final piece of a divine puzzle was about to fall into place. He turned his head slightly, as if gathering every remaining ounce of strength just to complete the task he had come to finish. Then, with a voice cracked but resolute, he whispered, "It is finished." The words washed over me like fire and water at the same time. Finished. Not defeated. Not overcome. Finished. Completed. Fulfilled. Perfected. He wasn't dying because he lost. He was dying because he won. As the darkness swallowed his final breath and the earth trembled in reverence, I felt something inside me shift. Something profound, something eternal. My own death was moments away, maybe minutes, maybe seconds. But for the first time in my entire existence, I wasn't afraid. Because I knew I wasn't dying alone. And I wasn't dying condemned. He had seen me. He had spoken to me. He had promised me paradise. And whatever came next, I believed him. My body was failing fast. Every breath felt thinner than the last, every heartbeat weaker, every tremor sharper. Death wasn't creeping anymore. It was marching. Steady, cold, certain. I could feel it rising through my legs, numbing them, consuming them. My hands, nailed wide above me, had gone pale and senseless. The world dulled at the edges, colors fading, sounds warping, as if I were sinking underwater. But even as my life drained from me, something else filled the space inside my chest. Something warm, something fierce, something I had never known before. Peace. The kind of peace you don't take. The kind of peace you're given. The kind of peace that seeps into your bones because someone else carried the storm for you. The crowd had thinned. Some fled when the darkness fell. Others scattered when the earth shook. A few lingered, shaken into silence, staring at Jesus as if realizing too late that they had crucified more than a man. I watched them with a strange detachment, as though they were figures in a dream I was finally waking from. One of the centurions, the same man who supervised my beating that morning, was staring at Jesus with wide, trembling eyes. His knuckles were white around the handle of his spear. His lips moved silently, as if he was trying to form a prayer he had never learned. I heard him whisper eventually, voice breaking, Surely, surely this man was the Son of God. It struck me that the first person besides me to speak truth on that hill was not a priest, not a scribe, not a man of faith, but a Roman executioner, someone whose hands were stained with the blood of hundreds. Grace was falling everywhere, even on the ones who least deserved it. The wind shifted. The darkness slowly began to loosen its grip on the world. But in me, the shadows thickened. My vision blurred again. My neck could barely hold my head. Every inhale felt like being stabbed from the inside. Every exhale felt like my soul slipping further from my body. And yet, I stayed awake. I fought the haze. I refused to surrender to unconsciousness. Not yet. Not until I saw what would happen to him. If he promised I would be with him in paradise today, then this wasn't just the end. It was the beginning. I wasn't going to close my eyes on that beginning. A sudden commotion broke out near Jesus. I forced my eyes toward him. Soldiers were approaching with heavy mallets, thick wooden clubs used to break the legs of dying men and hasten the end. I had heard the rumors. Rome didn't like lingering deaths on holy days. They wanted the bodies removed before sundown. My heart lurched. Panic flared. Not for myself. For him. The soldiers reached the cross of the other thief first. Without hesitation, without even looking into his eyes, they swung the mallet. The sound was sickening. Bones snapping. Flesh tearing. A scream erupted from his throat, a scream that didn't even sound human. The pain was unimaginable. His body convulsed violently, then sagged, then convulsed again. His breathing collapsed into desperate, choked gasps. He would be dead within minutes. I swallowed back bile. My stomach churned. I had lived a life soaked in violence, but this was cruelty beyond cruelty, striking a dying man simply to speed up a process they themselves had orchestrated. One of the soldiers approached my cross next. I clenched my teeth. This was it. My legs would break next. My final breath would follow quickly after. But in that strange suspended moment, just before the mallet rose, I felt no dread, no clawing terror, no desperate plea, because he had promised, and his promise weighed more than Roman mallets. The soldier raised the club. I closed my eyes, but the blow never came. A voice, sharp, commanding, shouted from somewhere behind him. "Stop. This one is already finished." I opened my eyes weakly. The soldier was staring up at me, then back at his superior. He grunted and stepped aside. My legs would remain unbroken. My death would come on its own terms, slow, natural, agonizing, but somehow gentler. Then the soldiers turned toward Jesus. My heart slammed against my ribs. Jesus wasn't moving. His head had fallen forward. His body hung limp, heavy, still. His chest no longer rose. No breath escaped his lips. A soldier climbed up, pressed 2 fingers to his throat, then to his wrist, then shook his head. "He's gone," he said. But another soldier scoffed. "If he's dead, prove it." The first soldier hesitated. Then, with a hardness in his eyes, not cruelty but duty, he drew his spear. The metal glinted even in the fading darkness. "No," I whispered, or tried to. "Don't." But soldiers do not take orders from dying thieves. The spear thrust forward, quick, practiced, brutal. It pierced Jesus' side. And from the wound, blood and water flowed. The soldier staggered back, startled. It wasn't normal. None of it was normal. I didn't understand the meaning then. I only understood this. He had truly died. The man who forgave the world. The man who promised me paradise. The man who loved even from a cross. Gone. Tears burned hot down my face. My chest ached, not from suffocation, but from grief so piercing it felt like another spear had run through me. But then, in the deepest part of me, something whispered. He said, "Today. Today you will be with me in paradise." He would not lie. He would not break a promise. His death wasn't defeat. It was the doorway, and it was opening for both of us. I closed my eyes. and waited for paradise. The world around me dimmed until it felt like I was watching it through layers of water. Sounds grew distant, muffled, as though I were slipping beneath the surface of a deep river. My breaths came shallow and ragged. Each inhale felt like lifting a mountain. Each exhale felt like surrender. My limbs no longer hurt. They no longer felt like anything. Numbness crept up my legs, then my arms, then my chest. Death was close now. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I had lived my whole life terrified. Terrified of hunger, of punishment, of the Romans, of the shadows that followed men like me. Terrified of dying alone in an alley or rotting in a prison cell. Terrified that my existence meant nothing in the eyes of God or man. Yet here I was, dying beside the very one who created the breath slipping from my lungs. A thief, dying next to the Messiah. How strange and beautiful the mercy of God can be. The darkness that had swallowed the sky began to fade. Light seeped back into the world, weak at first, hesitant, as though creation wasn't sure it was allowed to shine again after witnessing such horror. The outlines of the hill sharpened. The silhouettes of soldiers moved more clearly. People began to murmur, unsure if they were witnessing a curse ending or a miracle beginning. And I drifted between worlds. Not fully alive. Not yet dead. Balanced on the edge of eternity. Voices swirled around me. Some were soft, women sobbing, calling his name. Some were harsh, soldiers giving orders, annoyed that their work was nearly done. Some were stunned, men whispering that the temple curtain had torn from top to bottom. Some were fearful, fathers gathering their children, looking at the darkened sky as if expecting fire to fall. All of it sounded far away. Except one sound. My name. Not spoken aloud. Not heard with my ears. But whispered inside my soul. It wasn't imaginary. It wasn't delusion. It was him. Not his voice from the cross. Not his earthly voice. But something deeper. Something eternal. A call that was soft yet stronger than the world itself. A call that said, "Come." Tears slipped down my cheeks without my permission. My chest burned, not with fear, but with longing. I forced my eyes open one last time. Jesus' body hung still. The world's cruelty etched into his skin like the final chapter of a long story. But his expression, though lifeless, held a strange serenity, as if even death had not stolen his victory. The soldier who had pierced him wiped his spear, but I saw his hands trembling. He kept glancing at Jesus as if expecting him to breathe again, as if fearing what would happen because he didn't. A few men approached, the wealthy one from Arimathea, Joseph, and another, Nicodemus. I didn't know them, but the tenderness with which they looked at Jesus told me everything. They weren't there to mock. They were there to honor. They had come for his body. They would bury him with dignity. I would have wept if I'd had any strength left. No one would claim my body. No one would lower me gently to the earth or wrap me in linen. My corpse would fall from the cross like garbage. My bones would be tossed into a pit. That was the fate of thieves. But then, something inside me whispered again, "You will not be there." And I believed it. My breaths grew thinner. My vision dimmed. The world tilted, blurred, softened. I felt myself slipping. Not violently, not painfully, but gently. Like being lowered into warm water. Like sinking into peace. Somewhere in the distance, a soldier barked an order. Someone else laughed nervously. A woman cried his name. But it all sounded like echoes from another lifetime. My final thoughts were not of my crimes, nor my regrets, nor the pain gripping my body. My final thoughts were of him. His eyes. His voice. His promise. "Today you will be with me in paradise." My heartbeat fluttered like a candle flame fighting the wind. And it stopped. And in the space between my last breath on earth and my first moment beyond it, I realized something astonishing. Death did not come for me. He did. He came to keep his promise. He came to carry me home. He came for the thief he refused to forget. And as darkness lifted from me, I began to see the light. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Not the way a dying man dreams. Muddy visions and fevered images flickering behind sealed eyelids. No. This was different. This felt real. Solid. More real than the hill where I had been crucified. More real than the world I had lived in. More real than the pain that had shaped every day of my existence. My eyes opened, but not with the struggle of a body fighting for breath. They opened effortlessly, as though they had been made new. The world around me glowed with a light I couldn't explain. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was gentle, warm, alive. A light that didn't shine onto things but through them. I looked down. My hands, no nails, no blood, no torn flesh. They were whole, clean, strong. My legs, firm beneath me. No numbness, no trembling, no agony. My chest, filled with breath so pure it felt like drinking joy. My mind, clearer than it had ever been in my entire life. I wasn't dead. Or rather, I wasn't only dead. I had crossed over. A breeze brushed past me, carrying a scent I had never smelled but somehow recognized. Something like flowers. Something like water. Something like home. The air tasted alive, as though every breath carried meaning. The ground beneath my feet felt soft, warm, welcoming. I stood in a field so vast it felt like freedom itself had taken shape. Colors shimmered with depth beyond anything I had seen. Green richer than emeralds, blue deeper than oceans, gold brighter than sunrise. I took a step. My soul trembled. Another step. My heart raced, not with fear, but wonder. I turned, and that was when I saw him. Jesus. Not bloody. Not broken. Not crucified. Not dead. Alive. Alive in a way I cannot describe without failing. His form radiated a light woven from compassion and power, fierceness and gentleness. His scars remained, yes, but they glowed like victories, not wounds. His eyes, those eyes that had seen through me on the cross, were the same, yet fuller, deeper, infinite. My knees buckled. I fell forward, not in fear, but in awe, as a starving man falls before food. As a wanderer collapses before shelter, as a sinner bows before perfect love. I couldn't speak. Words were too small. He stepped toward me, each step a harmony in the air. His presence filled everything. My mind, my heart, the very space around us. He reached out his hand, the same hand that had been pierced for me. "Stand," he said. His voice, oh God, his voice was like hearing truth spoken for the first time in my life. It carried warmth and power, authority and tenderness. And when he spoke, the world responded, grass bending slightly, light shimmering, air vibrating as though creation itself bowed to the sound. I took his hand. Strength surged through me, not just physical strength, but something deeper. Identity, worth, restoration. Every lie I had believed about myself, every accusation, every sin, every failure, crumbled under the weight of his touch. "You kept your promise," I whispered, voice trembling. He smiled, the kind of smile that could mend universes. "I always do." I choked on a sob, overwhelmed. Not by guilt, not by fear, overwhelmed by love. Because I had lived a life of taking, a life of violence, a life twisted by circumstance and choices. I had no inheritance, no honor, nothing to offer. Yet here I was, not because I was worthy, but because he was willing. I finally managed to stand fully, still holding his hand, still trembling under the magnitude of his presence. Where am I?" I asked. He didn't point. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, toward a light more brilliant than anything I had seen, a light that felt like the heart of God. "Paradise," he said softly. "The place prepared for you. For me. The thief. The criminal. The failure. Paradise had been prepared for me." My knees nearly gave out again. But Jesus held me steady. He looked into my eyes, into the deepest parts of me. There was no shame there, no remembrance of my crimes. Only affection, only purpose, only the tenderness of someone who had always known what I could become once freed from the weight of the world. "Walk with me," he said. And I did. Each step felt like eternity unfolding, like healing settling into places I never knew were wounded, like becoming who I was always meant to be. As we walked, he spoke, not loudly, not urgently, but with the patience of someone who has all of time in his hands. "You were not chosen because of who you were," he said. "You were chosen because of who you are to me." I swallowed hard. "And who is that?" I asked. He smiled, eyes shining like morning. "My friend." I wept, not with despair, but with joy so fierce it felt like being remade. Because the truth hit me with stunning clarity. I had died a thief. But I lived again, a friend of God. And paradise was only the beginning. We walked together through a landscape that felt both familiar and foreign, as though every beautiful place I had ever imagined was merely a dim shadow of what I was seeing now. The air hummed with a kind of music, not from instruments, not from voices, but from existence itself. Every blade of grass seemed to sing. Every ray of light seemed to praise. Every breath filled me with something that felt like purpose woven into oxygen. Jesus walked beside me, not as a distant king, not as a judge, but as a companion. His presence didn't press down with authority. It lifted, as though simply being near him made me more myself. I kept glancing at his hands, those hands that had been pierced for me, for the entire world. The scars remained, but they glowed with an almost indescribable beauty, as if victory had carved itself into his skin. "Why me?" I asked suddenly, the question slipping out like a confession. I had been holding it back, afraid to disturb the holiness around me, but the words burned too fiercely inside my chest to contain. "Why would you promise paradise to someone like me?" Jesus stopped walking. The field around us stilled, as if creation itself leaned closer to listen. He turned toward me, his gaze steady and tender. "You asked," he said gently. Those two words struck me harder than any Roman mallet ever could. You asked. Not performed. Not earned. Not justified. Not bargained. You asked. I didn't deserve it, I whispered, shame flickering in me like an old ghost trying to resurrect itself. He smiled, softly, kindly, as though speaking to a child learning to walk. No one does. That's why it's grace. Grace. The word wrapped around my heart like a warm cloak. I had heard it before, long ago in dusty synagogues, spoken by men who did not live it. But from his lips, it was different. Grace wasn't an idea. It was a person. A presence. A hand extended to the undeserving. He continued walking, and I followed, each step lighter than the last. You spent your life unseen, he said, not accusingly but as a simple truth. Forgotten by those who should have cared. Condemned by those who never knew your story. But I saw you. I always saw you. Tears blurred my vision. Not from sadness, those days were gone, but from the sheer weight of being known so completely. Would it have been different, I asked hesitantly, if I had met you earlier? If I hadn't lived the life I lived? Jesus stopped again, but this time he looked upward, as though contemplating eternity itself. Every moment of your life, he said slowly, led you to look at me on that cross the way you did. Not with arrogance, not with pride, but with truth, with need, with longing for something more. He looked back at me, and his eyes held so much love I thought I might collapse under it. You recognized me because you understood your own emptiness. And that humility is the door to heaven. I inhaled sharply as his words settled inside me, filling cracks I never knew existed. We continued walking, and the landscape began to change subtly. The air grew warmer, the colors brighter, the ground beneath my feet softer, almost luminous. A river appeared ahead, clearer than crystal, glowing faintly with light from beneath. The sound of it was soothing, harmonizing with the air itself. What is this place? I asked. He smiled as though revealing a secret. A glimpse of home. Home. The word wrapped around me, gentle and powerful. I had never truly had one. Not after my parents died. Not after the streets became my shelter. Not after I fell into crime, into violence, into survival. Home had always been an idea, not a place. And now here I was, standing in a world so full of peace and belonging that the word home suddenly felt too small. Jesus led me to the river's edge. I knelt beside it instinctively, overwhelmed. My reflection shimmered across the surface, not the gaunt, haunted face of a dying thief, but a face renewed. Eyes clear, skin whole, soul unburdened. "I don't recognize myself," I whispered. "You're seeing who you were always meant to be," he replied softly. I closed my eyes as a new wave of emotion crashed through me. It wasn't grief. It wasn't regret. It was healing. Pure, unfiltered healing. "Is this where I stay?" I asked quietly, afraid of the answer. "Not yet," he said, though his smile wasn't sad. "This is the beginning. Paradise is more than a place. It is presence. It is restoration. It is becoming." He placed a hand on my shoulder, warm, steady, eternal. "You will walk further. You will see more. You will grow. You are not finished." His words struck me like revelation. I had lived my entire life believing my story ended in failure, in punishment, in darkness. But here, standing beside the Savior who had claimed me even in my dying breath, I understood an extraordinary truth. Death had not ended my story. It had restored it. He turned toward the horizon again, where light spilled like dawn. "Come," he said. And without hesitation, I followed him into the next chapter of an eternal story I never knew was mine. We walked toward the horizon, and with each step, the light ahead grew brighter, yet never harsh, never blinding. It was a light that welcomed rather than overwhelmed, a light that felt like it had been calling my name long before I ever knew I had one worth calling. I didn't know where we were going, and for the first time in my entire existence, I didn't need to. The fear, the survival instincts, the desperate need to know what comes next. All the chains that had ruled my life had fallen away. I simply walked with him. And walking with him felt like walking with purpose itself. As we moved, the landscape shifted again, subtly, beautifully. Trees rose in the distance, tall, ancient, alive in a way earthly trees never were. Their leaves shimmered with a gold that wasn't merely color but meaning. A gentle wind carried their scent. Something sweet, something familiar, something that stirred long-forgotten memories of childhood before the world grew sharp. Birds flew overhead, not frantic or fearful, but graceful, their songs harmonizing with the river that wound beside us. I felt it before I saw it, a presence. Not like Jesus' presence. His was distinct, singular, infinite, but something vast and encompassing, like the atmosphere itself had a heartbeat. It filled the air with warmth, with joy, with an overwhelming sense of belonging. And then, ahead of us, I saw it. A place, a city, a garden, something impossible to describe because no earthly word can capture a glimpse of eternity. The gates stood tall, not as barriers, but as invitations. They shone like pearl and fire, shifting gently between colors I had no names for. Beyond them, I sensed life. Not the life of survival I had known. Not the life of burden and fear. But life as it was meant to be. Full, radiant, eternal. Jesus slowed his pace and turned toward me. "This is paradise," he said softly. "The home prepared for those who come to me." My breath caught. My hands trembled. My mind struggled to accept the reality before me. "For those who come to you," I echoed. "But I came to you only at the end. I had nothing to offer. Not a single good deed. Not a single righteous act." He stepped closer, placing his hand over my heart. It pulsed beneath his touch, steady and renewed. "You offered me your truth," he said. "Your heart. Your need. That is all I ever wanted." Tears filled my eyes as my throat tightened with emotion. All my life, I had believed I needed to earn worth. Earn love. Earn forgiveness. But standing here, before the gates of eternity, beside the one who died for me, I understood with a clarity sharper than the nail that once pierced my wrist. Grace cannot be earned. It can only be received. Jesus continued walking, and I followed. As we neared the gates, they opened. Not because we forced them, not because we deserved it, but because they recognized him. Light poured out, warm and alive, wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. Suddenly, I felt something. Someone rushed toward me. A small figure. A voice I remembered from a lifetime of pain and survival. My brother. My little brother. Not as the starving child I left behind, but whole. Radiant. Laughing with a joy I had forgotten he had. He collided into me, arms around my waist, face pressed against my chest. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice filled with the purest certainty. I fell to my knees, clutching him, tears falling freely. My heart broke open, not with sorrow, but with restoration. All the years of guilt, of wondering, of fearing what became of him, they vanished. I looked up at Jesus, unable to speak through the sobs. He nodded, eyes warm. "Nothing is lost in my kingdom." I held my brother close, inhaling the scent of a heaven-scented child no cruelty had ever touched. He pulled back, smiling brightly, and grabbed my hand, tugging me forward. "Come on," he said eagerly. "I have so much to show you." I laughed, a sound so foreign to my own ears it startled me. A laugh full of freedom. A laugh unshackled. My brother led me across the threshold, and Jesus followed behind us, his presence casting light over everything we touched. We walked into a world where sorrow could not enter, where shame had no voice, where every tear was wiped away before it could fall. A garden stretched out before us, vast as eternity and intimate as a childhood memory. Fruit hung from trees like jewels. Rivers glowed. Flowers opened their petals as we passed, turning toward the light that walked beside us. "Is this truly mine?" I asked Jesus, voice trembling. He placed his hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. "This," he said, "is only the beginning." The words settled into me like destiny. I had lived a life marked by crime. I had died a death marked by justice. But eternity was marked by grace. I turned back one last time, gazing toward the distant horizon where earth lay far beyond sight. The cross where I had died. The world where I had sinned. The life where I had fallen. "Thank you," I whispered. For the first time in my existence, the words felt too small. But he understood. He always understood. And as we walked deeper into paradise, my brother's laughter echoing ahead, Jesus' footsteps beside me, and the light of eternity bathing every inch of my renewed soul, I realized the most miraculous truth of all. I had been a thief my whole life. But in the end, he was the one who stole me. From death, from darkness, from despair. And he kept me forever.